You wake up this morning and that familiar weight settles on your chest again. It's the same feeling that's been haunting you for weeks, maybe months. The sense that your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, that heaven feels impossibly distant, and that the healing you desperately need seems like a cruel joke. You've tried everything, haven't you? You've pleaded, bargained, even demanded answers from God, but the silence feels deafening. Are you feeling this emptiness right now? This spiritual drought that makes you question everything you once believed about divine love and mercy? The truth is, you're not alone in this desert of the soul. Saint Teresa of Avila, the great mystic and doctor of the Church, knew this same agonizing thirst. In her masterwork, The Interior Castle, she writes about souls that feel abandoned, describing how the soul seems to find itself in a desert where it cannot find water anywhere. She understood the torment of feeling spiritually barren, of crying out to God and hearing only echoes. Teresa spent years of her own life feeling disconnected from the divine presence she once knew so intimately. But here's what she discovered that changed everything, and what's about to change your life too. There's an ancient practice, rooted in biblical tradition and sanctified by centuries of Christian mysticism, that Teresa herself embraced in her deepest moments of spiritual crisis. It involves 5 simple words, spoken over water, that create a bridge between your parched soul and the infinite wellspring of God's healing grace. This isn't superstition or empty ritual. It's a sacramental act that awakens something profound within you, something that secular medicine cannot touch and human comfort cannot reach. These words have the power to transform ordinary water into a conduit of divine mercy, just as Christ himself declared, "Whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst." That is why, the moment we say, "Jesus, I trust in you." But before we unveil these sacred words, you need to understand something crucial. This isn't about magic formulas or guaranteed outcomes. Teresa would be the first to warn against such thinking. This is about opening your heart to receive whatever healing God knows you truly need, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. Are you ready to trust in this ancient wisdom? Are you willing to step beyond your skepticism and allow the mystics who walked before us to guide you toward the living water that never runs dry? The journey begins with your willingness to believe that even in your deepest drought, the spring of divine love is closer than your next breath. Picture Teresa of Avila in her darkest hour, not the glorious saint we venerate today, but a broken woman in her 20s, lying paralyzed in her convent cell, her body racked with mysterious illnesses that left her unable to move for months. The doctors had given up. Her own sisters in religious life whispered that perhaps God was punishing her for some hidden sin. In that moment of absolute desperation, when human hope had evaporated like morning mist, something extraordinary happened. Teresa discovered what she would later call the prayer of quiet, a state where the soul finds itself drinking directly from the divine fountain, even when the body remains in agony. In her own words, she describes this revelation. Let us imagine that these 2 fonts have 2 water tanks that fill with water. I can't find anything more appropriate than water to explain some spiritual experiences. Teresa understood something profound about the nature of divine healing, that God's grace flows like water, finding the cracks in our brokenness and filling the empty spaces in our souls. She distinguished between 2 types of spiritual water, that which we laboriously draw through our own efforts in prayer and meditation, and that which springs forth directly from the divine source when we least expect it. The second type, she insisted, is always more powerful, more transformative, and often arrives precisely when we feel most abandoned. You might be wondering, how could a 16th century nun possibly understand your 21st century struggles? How could her medieval mysticism speak to your modern pain? But here's the remarkable truth. Human suffering transcends time and culture. The cry of your heart today is the same cry that echoed through Teresa's convent cell 500 years ago. The longing for healing, for purpose, for a God who feels close and real. These are universal human experiences that connect you to every person who has ever looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone was listening. Teresa's genius wasn't in escaping the human condition, but in diving so deeply into it that she found the divine presence hidden within. What Teresa discovered about water and prayer, about words spoken in faith and the mysterious workings of grace wasn't theoretical knowledge but lived experience born from years of spiritual desolation. She knew what it felt like to pray into seeming emptiness. She understood the temptation to give up on divine intervention altogether. But she also learned that God's healing often comes disguised as ordinary elements: bread, wine, oil, and yes, simple water transformed by faith and sacred intention. Are you beginning to sense that your current spiritual drought might actually be preparing you for the deepest drink of divine mercy you've ever experienced? Teresa would tell you that sometimes God allows the well to run dry so that when the living water returns, you'll never take it for granted again. Modern science is finally catching up to what mystics like Teresa knew centuries ago. Water has an almost miraculous capacity to hold and transmit information, energy, and intention. Dr. Masaru Emoto's groundbreaking research revealed that water crystals respond to words, thoughts, and emotions, forming beautiful or chaotic patterns based on the vibrations they encounter. When positive words like love and gratitude are spoken over water, the molecules organize into stunning, symmetrical designs. When negative words are used, the crystals become distorted and fragmented. This isn't New Age fantasy. It's documented scientific observation that validates what Teresa intuited through her mystical experiences. But Teresa's understanding went even deeper than modern research. She recognized that water, being the primary component of our physical bodies and the element of baptismal rebirth, serves as a perfect medium for divine grace to work within us. In The Interior Castle, she writes extensively about the soul as a garden that must be watered, comparing different levels of prayer to various methods of irrigation. The highest form, she discovered, is when the Lord waters it with His own hand, when divine grace flows directly into the soul like rain from heaven, requiring no human effort or sophisticated technique, only receptive faith. Consider this profound truth. Your body is roughly 60% water, your brain is 75% water, and your heart is 73% water. Every thought, emotion, and intention you hold is literally swimming in this miraculous substance that responds to spiritual influence. When you speak sacred words over water with sincere faith, you're not just performing an external ritual, you're preparing to receive healing at the deepest cellular level. Teresa understood that we are walking temples of living water, and that divine healing can flow through this medium with astonishing power when we align ourselves with God's will. The 5 words that Teresa and other mystics have used throughout history aren't random sounds or magical incantations. They are carefully chosen expressions of faith, surrender, and divine invitation that create what Teresa called a disposition of the soul, a spiritual posture that allows healing grace to flow freely. Are you beginning to understand that your body itself is a sacred vessel, designed to receive and channel divine mercy? Can you feel the truth stirring within you, that the very water you're about to bless has been waiting throughout all of human history for this moment of sacred purpose? Your pain is real, isn't it? That chronic condition that steals your sleep and shadows your days. The depression that makes even breathing feel like an impossible task. The anxiety that turns ordinary moments into emotional minefields. The broken relationship that feels like a wound that will never heal. The financial crisis that makes you question everything you thought you knew about security and provision. Whatever brought you to this moment of seeking divine intervention isn't imaginary or insignificant. It's the weight of genuine human suffering that deserves compassion, attention, and supernatural intervention. Teresa of Avila would look into your eyes with complete understanding because she carried her own crushing burdens. Beyond her physical ailments, she faced constant criticism from church authorities who questioned her mystical experiences, financial struggles that threatened her reform work, and spiritual darkness so deep that she once wrote, "I thought my soul was lost." She knew what it meant to feel abandoned by heaven precisely when you need it most. In her letters to suffering friends, she often wrote about the mysterious ways that God uses our deepest pain as the very ground where miracles grow. She believed that suffering, when united with Christ's passion, becomes a doorway through which divine healing can enter the world. But here's what Teresa discovered that can transform your understanding of your current struggles. God doesn't permit suffering because He enjoys watching you squirm. Rather, He allows certain trials because he knows that the healing you're about to receive will be so profound, so life-changing, that it will not only restore what was broken, but elevate you to a spiritual dimension you never imagined possible. Your current pain is actually preparing space within your soul for a miracle so powerful that you'll one day thank God for every tear you've shed on the journey toward this moment of divine intervention. The 5 sacred words you're about to learn carry within them the cumulative faith of countless believers who have walked this path before you. Every saint who ever lived understood that healing isn't just about returning to a previous state of normalcy. It's about being transformed into someone capable of receiving and sharing divine love at levels that suffering has made possible. Your current crisis isn't the end of your story. It's the labor pain that precedes the birth of your deepest spiritual awakening. Are you ready to stop seeing your suffering as evidence of God's absence and start recognizing it as preparation for His most intimate presence? The moment has arrived to unveil the 5 words that have carried healing power through centuries of Christian mysticism. But before Teresa would share these words with any of her spiritual children, she would insist that you understand their true source and power. These words are not magical formulas that manipulate divine energy. They are expressions of the deepest Christian faith, rooted in Scripture and sanctified by the lived experience of mystics who found God in their darkest moments. The power isn't in the words themselves, but in the faith, humility, and surrender with which they are spoken. The 5 sacred words are, Jesus, I trust in you completely. These words, which echo through Teresa's writings and the testimonies of countless saints, contain within them the essence of Christian healing prayer. Jesus, the name above every name, the divine physician who healed the sick and raised the dead. I trust, the complete abandonment of your own will and understanding, the surrender that Teresa called the prayer of abandonment. In you, the recognition that healing comes not from your own efforts but from divine mercy, completely, the total commitment that holds nothing back, the wholehearted faith that Jesus described as moving mountains. When you speak these words over water, you're not performing magic, you're participating in a sacramental act that has deep biblical roots. Jesus himself connected healing with water when he healed the blind man at the pool of Siloam, when he turned water into wine at Cana, and when he offered the Samaritan woman living water that would forever quench her spiritual thirst. Teresa understood that water blessed with sincere prayer becomes a physical sign of invisible grace, a tangible reminder that God works through ordinary elements to accomplish extraordinary healings. But here's the crucial truth that Teresa would want you to understand. The healing that comes through these words might not manifest exactly as you expect. Sometimes physical healing occurs immediately and dramatically. Sometimes the healing is gradual and almost imperceptible. Sometimes the healing is primarily emotional or spiritual, bringing peace in the midst of continued physical challenges. The prayer, Jesus, I trust in you completely, acknowledges that divine wisdom surpasses human understanding, and that the healing you receive will be exactly what your soul needs most, even if it's different from what your mind initially wanted. Are you prepared to trust so completely that you'll accept whatever form of healing divine love chooses to give you? Teresa of Avila approached every moment of prayer with the reverence of someone entering a royal court, because she understood that sincere prayer creates a meeting place between heaven and earth. She would want you to prepare for this sacred ritual not with anxiety or desperation, but with the quiet confidence of a beloved child approaching a loving father. Find a place where you can be alone with God. Perhaps your bedroom in the quiet hours before dawn, a peaceful corner of your garden, or even your kitchen table after the household has settled into sleep. The location matters less than the intention you bring to this holy moment. Begin by holding a simple glass of clean water in your hands. As you cradle this ordinary element, remember that it connects you to every baptism, every miracle, every moment of divine encounter in Christian history. Teresa would remind you that this water carries the memory of Christ's baptism in the Jordan, the wedding feast at Cana, and the living water promised to the woman at the well. Feel the weight of this sacred opportunity. You are about to participate in a tradition that spans 2 millennia, joining your voice to the prayers of saints, martyrs, and mystics who found healing through this ancient practice. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths, allowing the worries and distractions of daily life to settle like sediment in a still pond. Teresa called this process recollection, the gathering of all your scattered thoughts and emotions into a single point of focus on divine love. Speak these words aloud, slowly, and with deep reverence. Jesus, I trust in you completely. Let each word resonate through your being. Feel the name of Jesus on your lips. Taste the surrender in the phrase I trust. Experience the relief of placing your burdens into hands that are both infinitely powerful and tenderly loving. As you speak these words, visualize the water in your hands being penetrated by divine light, transformed by grace, charged with healing power that transcends scientific explanation. This isn't mere imagination. Teresa would tell you that contemplative visualization opens the soul to receive whatever God desires to give. The water remains physically the same, but spiritually it has become a sacramental, a visible sign of invisible grace, a tangible connection between your faith and God's mercy. Now drink slowly and reverently, allowing each sip to remind you that you are receiving not just blessed water, but liquid faith, hope made manifest, love in its most essential form. What happens in the invisible realm when faith meets physical elements like water? Teresa of Avila spent her lifetime exploring this mystery, and her insights remain as relevant today as they were 5 centuries ago. She discovered that divine healing operates according to laws that transcend physical science while working through natural processes in ways that honor both the spiritual and material dimensions of human existence. When you drink water blessed with sincere prayer, you're not bypassing the natural order. You're accessing the supernatural grace that undergirds and sustains all of creation. Teresa understood that healing begins at the soul level and works outward into the body. In The Interior Castle, she describes how divine grace first touches the deepest center of the soul, what she calls the 7th mansion, and then radiates outward through the various faculties of mind, emotion, and physical being. This explains why sacred healing sometimes produces immediate physical results, while other times it first brings emotional peace, mental clarity, or spiritual awakening that gradually transforms the body's capacity for wellness. The water you've blessed becomes a vehicle for grace to work at whatever level your soul most needs attention. Modern research in psychoneuroimmunology has documented how thoughts, emotions, and spiritual states directly impact physical health through measurable changes in brain chemistry, hormone levels, and immune function. When you speak words of trust and faith over water, you're literally reprogramming your nervous system to expect healing, creating biochemical conditions that support rather than hinder your body's natural healing processes. But Teresa would remind you that this scientific explanation, while fascinating, only describes the mechanism. The true source of healing remains the infinite love of God working through faith. The profound mystery is that divine healing respects human freedom while transcending human limitation. God never forces healing upon anyone, but neither is he constrained by medical prognosis or statistical probability. The prayer, Jesus, I trust in you completely, creates what Teresa called a disposition of the soul that removes the barriers we unconsciously place between ourselves and divine mercy. Your blessing of water isn't an attempt to control God's response, but an expression of openness to receive whatever form of healing divine love chooses to provide. Can you feel the difference between demanding a specific outcome and surrendering to infinite wisdom that sees the whole picture of your life's purpose? Throughout history, ordinary people have discovered extraordinary healing through the simple practice you've just learned. Teresa herself documented numerous instances of physical, emotional, and spiritual restoration that occurred when sincere souls united prayer with sacramental elements like blessed water. In her letters to friends and fellow religious, she frequently mentions cases where this ancient practice produced results that confounded physicians and confounded skeptics while strengthening the faith of believers. One account that Teresa recorded involves a young mother who had suffered from debilitating headaches for over a decade, pain so severe that she could barely care for her children or participate in family life. After learning about the practice of blessing water with prayers of complete trust, she began each day by speaking the 5 sacred words over a simple glass of water and drinking it while visualizing Christ's healing presence flowing through her body. Within weeks, the headaches began to diminish, and within 3 months, they had disappeared entirely. More importantly, the woman reported a profound sense of peace and spiritual connection that transformed not just her physical health, but her entire relationship with God. Teresa was careful to document not just the physical healings, but the spiritual transformations that accompanied them. She noticed that people who practiced this form of prayer often experienced what she called divine touches, moments of profound spiritual awakening that brought clarity, purpose, and joy that transcended their original healing requests. A merchant who had sought healing for chronic stomach ailments found not only physical relief, but a calling to dedicate his business profits to caring for orphans. An elderly woman whose arthritis had imprisoned her in her home discovered that her restored mobility came with an unexpected gift for counseling troubled young people. Perhaps most significantly, Teresa observed that the practice of blessing water with words of complete trust taught people to recognize divine presence in ordinary moments. Those who maintained this practice reported developing what she called habitual recollection, a constant awareness of God's loving presence that transformed every meal, every drink, every daily routine into an opportunity for communion with the divine. Are you beginning to understand that the healing you seek might be larger and more wonderful than you originally imagined? Can you envision a life where every ordinary moment becomes a potential encounter with infinite love? The true test of any spiritual healing isn't found in the moment of miraculous intervention, but in how that healing transforms your daily life. Teresa of Avila understood that authentic encounters with divine mercy create ripple effects that touch every relationship, every decision, every moment of your existence. When you've tasted the living water that Jesus promised, when you've experienced firsthand the power of complete trust in divine love, you can never again live as though God were distant or indifferent to your struggles. Your healing, whatever form it takes, comes with a sacred responsibility. Teresa would remind you that every grace received is meant to be shared. Every healing experienced is designed to increase your capacity to become an instrument of healing for others. This doesn't mean you need to become a professional healer or start a ministry. It means that your transformed life becomes a living testimony to the reality of divine love. Your peace in the midst of former anxiety, your hope despite previous despair, your trust where once there was only fear. These changes in you will speak louder than any words about the transformative power of surrendering completely to Jesus. The daily practice of blessing your water with words of complete trust becomes a cornerstone of what Teresa called practicing the presence of God. Each morning as you speak those 5 sacred words, you're not just seeking healing, you're renewing your commitment to live as someone who believes that divine love is real, active, and constantly available. This simple ritual becomes a declaration of faith that influences how you respond to stress, how you treat difficult people, how you handle setbacks, and how you celebrate victories. Teresa discovered that souls who maintain this practice of sacred trust develop what she called spiritual liberty, a freedom from the fears, resentments, and anxieties that once dominated their inner landscape. They find themselves naturally drawn to acts of kindness, spontaneously offering encouragement to struggling friends, and experiencing an inexplicable joy that seems to bubble up from a source deeper than circumstances. Are you ready to step into this transformed life? Are you prepared to become someone whose very presence reminds others that miracles are not only possible, but probable for those who trust completely in divine love? As our journey together draws to a close, Teresa of Avila would want you to understand that the healing you've sought and the practice you've learned are ultimately about discovering the truth that has always lived within you. You are beloved beyond measure by a God who desires nothing more than your complete happiness and spiritual flourishing. The water you blessed was never just water. It was a tangible reminder of the living water that Christ promised would become within you, a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The 5 sacred words, Jesus, I trust in you completely, are not merely a healing formula, but a life philosophy, a way of moving through the world that acknowledges divine sovereignty while embracing human responsibility. Teresa discovered that people who live from this place of complete trust develop an inner stability that no external circumstance can shake. They face challenges with supernatural peace, respond to opportunities with divine wisdom, and relate to others with the kind of love that can only flow from hearts that have been touched by infinite compassion. Your healing journey doesn't end with the resolution of whatever crisis brought you to this ancient practice. In fact, Teresa would tell you that this is just the beginning of a lifelong adventure of discovering how deep and wide and high divine love truly is. Each day offers new opportunities to practice complete trust, new situations that invite you to remember that the same God who created the universe is intimately concerned with every detail of your personal story. The water you drink each morning becomes a daily renewal of your commitment to live as someone who believes that divine love is the most powerful force in existence. As you continue this practice, you'll likely discover what Teresa and countless mystics before her found: that the God you thought you were trying to reach was actually pursuing you all along. The healing you sought was available before you asked. The love you longed for was already surrounding you, waiting only for your recognition and acceptance. The practice of blessing water with words of complete trust simply removed the barriers that prevented you from receiving what divine love had always intended to give you. Will you commit to living each day as someone who knows that you are infinitely loved, eternally supported, and constantly surrounded